Shooting the Fat with BeeSparrow. I'm your girl, BeeSparrow. Welcome to the show. Hey. Today I wanted to talk about the Netflix series When They See Us. Now, originally, I did not want to watch this series. For one thing, because everybody was talking about it, and I'm really not much of a hop-on. I don't like to do, a lot of things that other people do. But my curiosity got the best of me, and so me and my husband watched the series the other night. We finished it up yesterday. We started, I think, Friday or something like that, but finished it up Sunday. And what I found to be true was what everyone was saying is that it's going to piss you off. At least that first episode is really going to piss you off. But without going into too much, I don't want to tell the story for those of you who have not seen it. But I can, I can't hold it in no longer. I have to talk about this movie. This series, this Netflix series, When They See Us. In fact, I can't stop thinking about it. The series is produced by Ava DuVernay, and she digs deeper into this real-life story of injustice. I mean, you hear of it happening, but to see how it may have unfolded right there in front of your eyes is something else. I tell you, it's something else. And I wanted to do a panel on this show. I wanted to have people on the show to talk about it, but I found that a lot of people have not seen it yet. My goodness, I'm telling you, this is a must-see, people. A must-see. You have to watch this. And like I said, without going into too much of the details, I want to talk about it because it's a very important story for all, but especially for Black people and especially for Black men. So if you have not seen this, I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to sit down and watch it. I promise you, you're going to be mad at the first episode, but you're going to want to know more about the story. For those of you who do not know Ava DuVernay, she is an African-American filmmaker and a film distributor. She won the Directing Award in the U.S. Dramatic Competition at the 2012 Sundance Film Festival for her second feature film, Middle of Nowhere, becoming the first Black woman to win the award. For her work on Selma, DuVernay became the first Black woman to be nominated for a Golden Globe Award for Best Director, and also the first Black female director to have her film nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. And in 2017, she was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature for her film 13th in 2016. DuVernay's 2018 fantasy film A Wrinkle in Time had a production and marketing budget between $150 million to $250 million, making her the first Black American woman to direct a live-action film with a budget of that size. That film also made her the first Black African American woman to direct a film that earned at least $100 million domestically, though the movie failed to turn a profit. The following year, she created, directed, and co-wrote the Netflix drama miniseries, which we're about to talk about, When They See Us, based on the 1989 Central Park jogger case, which earned and is still earning critical acclaim. So, When They See Us. The true story behind the Netflix new miniseries, When They See Us. It's an awesome film. I encourage anybody to go see it, but especially Black people and super especially Black men. Okay, so on April 19th of 1989, everything changed for the New York City teenagers Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salaam, and Raymond Santana and Corey Wise. That night, a young female jogger will be brutally beaten and raped in Central Park, and they would ultimately become wrongful suspects of the investigation. Okay? Now, the Central Park Five, as these boys became known, are the subject of Netflix's latest true crime-based miniseries, When They See Us. The show's 4 episodes, which all come to the streaming service, which came on May 31st, and the work of I can't even talk, I'm so excited. The work of Ava DuVernay, as we spoke of earlier, and it aimed to tell the story of the boys wrongfully incarcerated for their perspectives. The perspective that they were so rarely seen during the media storm that surrounded their trials and convictions. When They See Us examines the role that the suspects' races played in their incrimination. All 5 were Black, well, 4 was Black, 1 Latino. And the effect that the wrongful convictions had on them and their families. She says that, Ava DuVernay says that her goal was to humanize the boys, who are now men, and who are widely regarded as criminals, Ava told CBS News of the series. And in doing that, she continued, to invite the audience to reinterrogate everyone that they define as a criminal. I'm asking the question to everyone, what do you see when you see Black boys? This is powerful and scary and hurtful and prideful and shameful, and it's just full of so many emotions. I cried, I cussed, I laughed, I just clutched my pearls, y'all. It was just, woo. Anyway, the night that it happened, on the evening of April 19th in 1989, a group of 30 or so Black and Latino teenagers entered Manhattan's Central Park near Harlem. They began causing trouble, throwing rocks at passing cabs, and generally creating mischief. Some of the boys' behavior eventually escalated to assaulting and robbing runners and cyclists, and their attacks would quickly become widely publicized. Meanwhile, a 28-year-old white investment banker named Trisha Milley had also entered the park, going for a jog, near where the boys began their destructive trek. Some 4 hours later, police were called when her body was found in a ravine. She had been brutally beaten, raped, and left for dead, suffering from a fractured skull and extreme loss of blood. Immediately, police assumed the young men wreaking havoc in Central Park that night were also responsible for the assault against Trisha, who would become publicly known as the Central Park Jogger. By the time she was found, they had already apprehended 2 boys who they believed to be part of the group, and they later brought in 2 more for questioning. The boys were Antron, Kevin, Raymond, and Yusef. Corey, a fifth boy, simply accompanied his friend Yusef to the station before being pulled into the interrogation himself. I think I'm telling y'all what happened in the story, but like I said, I can't help it. I have to talk about this. Now, Trisha, the jogger, had been so badly beaten and lost so much blood that night that her doctors believed there was no way she would survive. She would go on to be in a coma for 12 days before coming to, and when she did regain consciousness, she would have no memory of the attack. Meanwhile, at the police precinct, the 5 teenage boys were being interrogated. Their questioning went on for hours and hours, and the boys would later allege that they were threatened and coerced into confessing to the rape and assault of Trisha, as well as implicating each other's guilt in the crime. In reality, only 2 of the teens actually knew each other at the time. By the end of their lengthy interrogation, 4 of the 5 boys had signed written confessions. The 5th, Yusef, had allegedly made verbal admissions to the investigator. And y'all, they talk about all of this in the all of this is in the Netflix series. Immediately upon receiving legal representation, all 5 boys retracted their statements they had made to the police, saying they had been bullied and intimidated into falsely confessing. Now, DNA evidence also failed to connect any of the boys to Trisha's rape. Unfortunately, however, this made no difference when the Central Park 5 went to courts. This film actually made me cry. I'm talking about boo-hoo, cry. My husband looked at me like I was crazy because I was talking to the TV, and I kind of remember this. 89, I probably was about 22 years old. 21. So I vaguely remember this, anyway, let me continue reading this article. That's on the Good Housekeeping website, goodhousekeeping.com. Okay, during the first trial in August 1990, Yusef, Antron, and Raymond were acquitted of attempted murder but convicted of rape, assault, robbery, and riot. At the time of their alleged crimes, Yusef and Antron were 15 and Raymond was 14, and they each received the maximum sentence possible for boys of their age, 5 to 10 years in a youth correctional facility. In the second trial, which ended in December of 1990, Kevin was convicted of attempted murder, rape, assault, and robbery, while Corey was convicted of sexual abuse, assault, and riot. Kevin was 14 and Corey was 16 when the crimes occurred, and they were sentenced to 5 to 10 years and 5 to 15 years, respectively. This breaks my heart. It gets deep, y'all. Y'all have to watch this. Although she still had no memory of the attack, Trisha went on to make a long but miraculously full recovery from her horrific injuries. She wrote a book called I Am the Central Park Jogger, which was released in 2003 and became a motivational speaker and advocate for victims of sexual assaults. Meanwhile, the boys fulfilled their youth prison sentences and continued to live with these widely publicized charges attached to their names. But then the unthinkable happened. In 2002, convicted murderer and serial rapist Matthias Reyes confessed to being the lone attacker in the assault of the Central Park jogger. Now, this is important. I want y'all to remember Matthias Reyes when y'all watch the film. Very important. I want to talk about this. And once I get enough people that has already seen the film, I want to form a panel so we can talk about this here. You know, I'm very passionate about this. I want to talk about it. So remember Matthias Reyes when you watch the series. He was able to provide details that only the perpetrator of the crime would know, and DNA testing found he was a match for the rape. The statute of limitations for the crime had passed at this point, however, so Matthias could not be charged. With this new information, then District Attorney Robert M. Morgenthau recommended all 5 boys, now men, be vacated of all their charges, meaning their convictions would now be entirely void. And so on December 19, 2002, Antron, Kevin, Yusuf, Raymond, and Corey were vindicated. And I think I just told y'all the ending of the story, and I'm sorry, but I had to. It's so good, and I want everybody in the world to watch this. So today, where are they today, you ask? I'm glad you asked. Of course, clearing these charges from their names didn't give the Central Park Five their youth back. So in 2003, Kevin, Raymond, and Antron filed a lawsuit against the city of New York for malicious prosecution, racial discrimination, and emotional distress. It took more than a decade of battling with the city's lawyers and the election of the New York City mayor, Bill de Blasio, but the case was eventually settled for $41 million, with Corey receiving $12.2 million and the other 4 men receiving $7.1 million each. And that's still not enough. That's still not enough. In 2015, Raymond reached out to director Ava DuVernay via Twitter, asking her if she would ever consider making the Central Park Five's story into a movie. At that point, When They See Us was born. And I wondered how did it come about. Just before its national premiere, Antoine, Kevin, Yusuf, Raymond, and Corey watched the new Netflix series together for the first time. As Ava describes it to CBS News, it was an emotional experience for all involved. I had a lot of beautiful things happen in my career, she said, but there's nothing like sitting behind them. Those 5 men in a small screening room, watching them watch a story we spent 4 years to make. They wept, I wept, they cheered, they held hands. So like I said, this series is on Netflix. It's called When They See Us. I encourage everybody to watch this movie. Now, in the movie, you will see that Donald Trump had condemned the boys and believed that they were guilty. He paid $85,000 for a newspaper ad. He wanted them to get the electric chair. Let me put it that way. Yes, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, was very passionate about this case. He made a comment. Let me see if I can't find it here. Where's that comment that Donald Trump made about the case? Recently. He made a comment about the case recently. But I'll find that later. Anyway, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Let me see. Well, while that loads, like I said, it's a very passionate, very emotional series, and but it's necessary. Donald Trump said, they admitted they were guilty. The police doing the original investigation say they were guilty. The fact that the case was settled with so much evidence against them is outrageous, and the woman so badly injured will never be the same. What a straight idiot. He said the fact that the case was settled with so much evidence against them is outrageous. What evidence did they find against them, Donald Trump? Do tell. So the prosecutor who prosecuted this case, her name is Linda Fairstein. She refuses to believe that those men are innocent today too. Now today, she is an American author, an attorney, and as I say, the former New York City prosecutor, focusing on crimes of violence against women and children. She was the head of the sex crime unit of the Manhattan District Attorney Office in 1976 until 2002. During that time, she oversaw the prosecution of the Central Park 5 case, wherein 5 teenagers, 4 African American and 1 Hispanic, were wrongfully convicted for the 1989 rape and assault in Central Park of a white female jogger. All 5 convictions were vacated in 2002 after Matias Reyes, a convicted serial rapist and murderer, confessed to having been the sole perpetrator of the crime, and DNA testing showed he was the sole contributor of the DNA of the semen on the victim. Even though this man came up and confessed to this crime, even all the evidence point to him. His DNA was found all over her clothes, all in, the clothes that they collected from the scene. No DNA was found from any of those 5 young men, the 4 black men and the 1 Hispanic. No DNA found from her on them. Nowhere. Nothing. Yet Donald Trump still believes that these men, are guilty. Linda Fairstein believes that these men are guilty. She wrote a letter to the Associated Press, which I'm going to come to in a minute, but let me finish reading what this is right here. After Reyes' confession in 2002, Fairstein still maintained that the wrongfully convicted teenage boys were guilty, and she lauded the police investigation as brilliant. By 2018, she insisted that the teenagers' confessions had not been coerced. After she left the DA's office in 2002, Fairstein began to publish mystery novels featuring Manhattan prosecutor Alexandra Cooper. Several have been bestsellers. In June 2019, after the release of the Netflix series When They See Us about the Central Park 5, Feinstein's publishers, Dutton, dropped her. They dropped her. But as I go over this article, I'm looking at all these notable awards that this lady won. She was so determined to hang these boys, not even lining up the evidence. She was so determined, and she still is so sure in her mind and her heart that these 5 men are still guilty. So here, let me name some of the awards that she has won. Maybe they could take some of them back. I don't know. Federal Bar Council's the Emery Buckner Award for Public Service. The UJA Federation's Prosecutor Award. The Columbia University's School of Medicine Award for Excellence. Glamour Magazine's Woman of the Year Award. American Heart Association Women of Courage Award. New York Women's Agenda 2010 Lifetime Achievement Award. Nero Wolfe Award for Excellence in Crime Writing. International Thriller Writers Award 2010 Silver Bullet Award. She got all these awards. She got all of these awards after she sent 5 innocent men to prison. They were babies. Let's see what else she did. Let's see what other legal career. Well, let me see what her legal career is about. Feinstein joined the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in 1972. I was 4 years old as an assistant district attorney In 1976, she was promoted to the head of the Sex Crimes Unit. 72. In 4 years, she was promoted to the head of the Sex Crime Unit, where she worked to support victims of crime. During her tenure, she prosecuted controversial and highly publicized cases such as the Preppy murder case against Robert Chambers. In 1986 and 1998, People versus Jovanovic cases. Feinstein, as head of sex crimes, oversaw the production of juvenile defenders known as the Central Park Five. We talked about that. This happened in the 1989 Central Park jogger case. The case was prosecuted by ADA's Elizabeth Lederer, who later she resigned, and Arthur Clements, with trials held in 1990. The convictions in the case were vacated in 2002, as we talked about, following a confession by the perpetrator, a convicted serial rapist and murderer, and confirmation by a DNA match to evidence at the scene. Feinstein left the DA's office in 2002 and has continued to consult, write, lecture, and serve as a sex crime expert for a wide variety of print and television media outlets, including CNN, MSNBC, and Larry King, among others. She has consulted for a number of media outlets during a number of high-profile prosecutions, including Michael Jackson's molestation charges in 2004, Kobe Bryant's sexual assault charges, and Scott Peterson's trial. She was also involved with a defense of Harvey Weinstein, helping to silence one of the sexual harassment complaints against him. Fairchild founded the Domestic Violence Committee of the New York Women's Agenda, but is a frequent speaker on issues related to domestic abuse. Her office supervised the prosecution in 1989 and 1990 of the Central Park jogger case, which ended in the conviction of the 5 teenagers, whose convictions were later vacated in a civil rights lawsuit filed in 2003. The 5 who were convicted claimed that Feinstein, with the assistance of detectives at the 20 precinct, coerced false confessions from them, following up to 30 straight hours of interrogation and intimidation of both the youths and their supporting adults. When Assistant U.S. Attorney David Nascenti, a Big Brother mentor to Yusef Salaam, one of the defendants, appeared at the precinct while the defendants was being grilled, plaintiffs claim Feinstein verbally abused him, demanded that he leave immediately, and called her husband to demand the home number of Nascenti's boss, Brooklyn U.S. Attorney Andrew Maloney, so she could get the young attorney fired. Feinstein said nobody under 16 was talked to until a parent or guardian arrived. 3 of the 5 went home and had a night's sleep before they were ever taken into custody. For most of them, the substance of their admissions came out within about an hour of the time they came in. She says she think Reyes ran with the pack of kids, the one that confessed. She believed that he ran with them. She said that he stayed longer when the others moved on. He completed the assault. She said she didn't think that there is a question in the minds of anyone present during the interrogation process that the 5 men were participants, not only in the other attacks that night, but in the attacks on the jogger. She watched more than 30 detectives, black, white, Hispanic guys, who never met each other before, conduct a brilliant investigation. Lawyers for the 5 defendants contested almost every element of Feuerstein's statement. All the 5 accused teenagers later claimed their confessions were coerced during interrogation through lies and intimidation. In 1990, each of the Central Park 5 were convicted of various assaults and sexual battery charges based in part on the allegedly false confessions obtained from them in 1989. Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise had signed written confessions, while Yusef Salaam made a verbal confession but refused to sign. Their confessions were upheld on appeal. Court Judge Vito Titoni specifically named Feuerstein in his dissenting opinion on the Salaam appeal. He said in an interview he was concerned about the criminal justice system that would tolerate the conduct of the prosecutor, Linda Feuerstein, who deliberately engineered the 15-year-old's confession. Feuerstein wanted to make a name. She didn't care. She wasn't human. All 5 convictions were vacated in 2002, as I mentioned before. Let me see how much time I have on this. 14 minutes. All 5 convictions were vacated in 2002 after convicted rapist Matias Reyes confessed to the crime. He confessed after he found religion. The police had recovered DNA of only one man at the site of the crime, and none of the Central Park 5 matched. The semen found on the victim contained DNA matching that of Reyes, confirming that he was the sole contributor to a certainty of 6 billion to 1. In 2003, Kevin Richardson, Raymond Santana, and Antron McCray sued the city, as we said, for malicious prosecution, racial discrimination, and emotional distress. While the city refused to settle for 11 years upon Mayor de Blasio taking office, a settlement in the case was reached in June 19, 2014 for $41 million. Ken Burns and his daughter Sarah and her husband made a documentary film about the case, which he compared to the Scottsboro Boys case. The film, The Central Park 5, premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in May 2012 and was released on November 23, 2012. In May of this year, 2019, Netflix released a 4-part drama series, When They See Us, about the case, directed by Ava DuVernay. In it, actress Felicity Huffman. This is what I find so ironic. Actress Felicity Huffman portrays Feuerstein, right? Felicity Huffman is involved in the college admissions scandal that have been going on. She is involved in that. So I find it ironic that she played the evil Linda Feuerstein in this series. Soon after the release of the When They See Us series, Feuerstein's publisher E.P. Dutton released her as a client. Feuerstein was also forced to resign from various nonprofit board roles, including Safe Horizon. On June 10, 2019, the Wall Street Journal published an op by Feuerstein, Netflix false story of Central Park 5, in which she claims that the 5 were not totally innocent, despite being innocent of the assault and rape of the jogger, and that DuVernay had defamed her. I have that letter, by the way. I want to read that. I don't know if I'll have time to read it. I might have to do a part 2, okay? So remember I spoke about the Jovanovic case that Linda Fairstein was on. Oliver Jovanovic sued Fairstein, alleging that she engaged in false arrest, malicious prosecution, malicious abuse of process, and denial of his right to a fair trial. This lawsuit stemmed from Fairstein's successful prosecution of Jovanovic in the case People versus Jovanovic, which was subsequently overturned on appeal. It was dismissed with prejudice by a new trial. The dismissal was requested in the interest of justice by the Office of the Manhattan District Attorney Robert M. Morgenthau. There was no physical evidence linking Jovanovic to the crime. While his accuser claimed she had been brutally attacked and left bleeding, she was found to have only a few fading bruises. If she, Fairstein, couldn't tell this was a false report, well, I'm just shocked, said former New York City sex crimes detective John Beza, who worked in the defense of Jovanovic after leaving the force. The $10 million lawsuit against Fairstein and two co-defendants, former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney Gail Heatherly, who now teaches at the Columbia Law School, and New York City Police Detective Milton Bonelli, was dismissed on summary judgment in September 2010. Fairstein Assistant District Attorney Vance, in his decision not to prosecute Dominique Strauss-Kahn for sexual assault in 2012, Fairstein's writing skills came into play in writing up the declination of decision not to charge. And I've already talked about her awards. I don't need to go into that. Let me see if I can go over this letter right quick. How much time do I have? I have 8 minutes. This letter was written by Linda Fairstein a couple of days ago. It reads, at about 9 p.m. on April 19, 1989, a large group of young men gathered on the corner of 110th Street and 5th Avenue for the purpose of robbing and beating innocent people in Central Park. There were more than 30 rioters, and the woman known as the Central Park jogger, Tricia Milley, was not their only victim. 8 others were attacked, including 2 men who were beaten so savagely that they required hospitalization for head injuries. Hospitalization. Reporters and filmmakers have explored this story countless times from numerous perspectives, almost always focusing on 5 attackers and 1 female jogger. But each has missed the larger picture of that terrible night, a riot in the dark that resulted in the apprehension of more than 15 teenagers who set upon multiple victims. That a sociopath named Matthias Rees confessed in 2002 to the rape of Miss Milley, and that the district attorney consequently vacated the charges against the 5 after they had served their sentences, has led some of these reporters and filmmakers to assume the prosecution had no basics on what to charge the 5 suspects in 1989. So it is with filmmaker Ava DuVernay in the Netflix miniseries When They See Us, a series so full of distortions and falsehoods as to be an outright fabrication. She goes on to say in this letter, it shouldn't have been hard for Ms. DuVernay to discover the truth. The facts of the original case are documented in a 117-page decision by New York State Supreme Court Justice Thomas Galligan, in sworn testimony given in 2 trials and affirmed by 2 appellate courts, and in sworn depositions of more than 95 witnesses, including the 5 themselves. Instead, she has written an utterly false narrative involving an evil mastermind, me, and the falsely accused, the 5. You're really calling the boys a lie because they're the ones that told her what to write. Okay? I'm going to pause it right here, and I will be right back to read the rest of this letter for you guys. This is BeeSparrow, BuzzzTweet Radio, and we are talking about the Netflix series When They See Us. I'm going to take a brief pause, ladies and gentlemen, and I will be right back. Thank you guys for listening. We are back. Part 2. Talking about the Netflix series When They See Us. This is part 2. And I was reading the letter that the prosecutor, Linda Feinstein, wrote to the Associated Press in reference to the film. I will continue. She goes on to say, I was one of the supervisors who oversaw the team that prosecuted the teenagers apprehended after the horrific night of violence. Ms. DuVernay's film attempts to portray me as an overzealous prosecutor and a bigot, the police as incompetent or worse, and the 5 suspects as innocent of all charges against them. None of this is true. Consider the film's most egregious falsehoods. When They See Us repeatedly portrays the suspects as being held without food, deprived of their parents' company, and advised and not even deprived of their parents' company and advice, and not even allowed to use the bathroom. If that had been true, surely they would have brought these issues up and prevailed in pre-trial hearings on the voluntariness in their statements, as well as in their lawsuit against the city. They didn't, because it never happened. And let me take me a sip of this water right here because this is getting juicy. Okay. Consider the film's most... Okay, I said that. In the first episode, which really pissed me off, the film portrays me at the precinct station house before dawn on April 20th. That day, after the attacks, unethically engineering the police investigation and making racist remarks. In reality, I didn't arrive until 8 p.m. 22 hours after the police investigation began. Did not run the investigation and never made any of the comments the screenwriter attributes to me. Excuse me. And that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there, Miss Frankenstein. She goes on to say, Ms. DuVernay depicts suspects Yusef Salem and Corey Wise being arrested on the streets. In fact, 2 detectives went to the door of the Salem apartments on the night of the 20th because both had been named by other rioters as attackers in multiple assaults. The film claims that when Mr. Salam's mother arrived and told police her son was only 15, meaning they could not question him without a parent in the room, I tried to stop her, demanding to see a birth certificate. The truth is that Mr. Salam himself claimed to be 16 and even had a forged bus pass to prove it. When I heard his mother say he was 15, I immediately halted his questioning. This is all supported by sworn testimony. Well, in the movie, he tells you that he had a fake ID and he had it to impress the girls. Miss DuVernay would have you believe. Let me go on. Let me finish. Let me continue what Miss Frankenstein has to say in her written letter to the Associated Press, which nobody's really give a fat. Excuse me. Ooh. Anyway, Miss Duvernay will have you believe the only evidence against the suspects was their allegedly forced confessions. That is not true. There is, for example, the African-American woman who testified at the trial and again during the 2002 reinvestigation that when Corey Wise called her brother, he told her that he had held the jogger down and felt her breasts while others attacked her. Corey Weiss called her brother and told her, okay. There were blood stains and dirt on clothing of some of the five. And then there are the statements of more than a dozen of the other kids who participated in the park rampage. Although none of the other kids admitted joining in the rape of Trisha Milley, they admitted attacking male victims and a couple of on a tandem bike. And each of them named some or all of the five as joining them. And that's because you coerced them to do it. Your people coerced them to do it. Don't you see what we're trying to show you, what we're trying to tell you? You and your people are crooked and evil. Y'all were crooked and evil, and you still are. And now it's time to pay. You're about to be exposed, ma'am. Okay, she goes on to say, nor does the film note that Mr. Salam took the stand at his trial, represented by a lawyer chosen and paid for by his mother, and testified that he had gone into the park carrying a 14-inch metal pipe, the same type of weapon that was used to bludgeon in both a male school teacher and Miss Milley. Mr. Riaz's confession changed none of this. He admitted being the man whose DNA had been left in the jogger's body and on her clothing, but the two juries that heard those facts knew the main assailant in the rape had not been caught. The five were charged as accomplices, as persons acting in concert with each other and with the then unknown man who raped the jogger, not as those who actually performed the act. In their original confessions, later recanted because y'all made them say it, they admitted to grabbing her breasts and legs, and two of them admitted to climbing on top of her and simulating intercourse. Semen was found on the inside of their clothing, corroborating those confessions. Lies. You lying. She goes on to say, Mr. Rear's confession DNA match and claim that he acted alone required that the rape charges against the five be vacated. I agree with that decision and still do, but the other charges for crimes against other victims should not have been vacated. Noting, Mr. Riaz said exonerated these five of those attacks. And there was certainly more than enough evidence to support those convictions of first-degree assault, robbery, riots, and other charges. It is a wonderful thing that these five men have taken themselves to responsible positions and community respect, that Ms. Duvernay ignores so much of the truth about the Gang of 30 and about the suffering of their victims, and that her film includes so many falsehoods is nonetheless outrage. Ms. Duvernay does not define me, and her film does not speak the truth. And you don't speak the truth either, Mr. Fairstein. You former sex crime prosecutor, and you best-selling crime novelist. What makes you think we believe anything you say when so many of your cases are suspicious? They need to reopen those cases that you prosecuted. They need to reopen them. They really do. Because I'm suspicious of you now. I'm so suspicious of you. It's crazy. Now let me talk about this Matthias Riaz. The so-called Central Park Five were wrongly convicted of assaulting and raping a jogger in Central Park in 1989, right? In reality, the attack was committed by serial rapist Matthias Riaz. As shown in the Netflix series When They See Us, Matias confessed to the Central Park jogger rape in 2002, and the other men were exonerated. Ever since the May 31st release of the Netflix widely populated miniseries When They See Us, the real-life story of the so-called Central Park Five has shot back into the spotlight. But wrongful conviction of these 5 Black and Latino men, Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salem, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise, as seen in the series, begs the question, who really committed the horrendous crime in the Central Park jogger case? We don't know. The question is answered by one of the most striking moments in the series when Corey, after serving more than a decade in prison, crosses paths with convicted murderer and serial rapist Matias Reyes, seemingly moved by their encounter. Matias goes to the police and confesses to being the true lone attacker in the Central Park jogger rape. DNA confirms his admission. Donald Trump and Linda Reinstein or Feinstein or Frankenstein still don't want to believe it. So, since they don't want to believe it, let's take a look back at the rapist's reign of terror in New York City and where Central Park rapist Matias Reyes is today. So, growing up, according to his 1991 interview with psychologist N.G. Burrell, Matias Reyes was born in Puerto Rico in 1971. Isn't that ironic, Donald Trump? He claimed he moved to New York with his mother before they ultimately went their separate ways when Matias was 15 or 16 years old. He also claimed he suffered sexual abuse as a young boy before going on to commit violent crimes himself. Even as a child growing up in the school system, he exhibited violent behavior. Said Richard Siracusa, one of his court-appointed lawyers, told the New York Times in 2002, to the average person, he was seen perfectly normal, but he was far from normal. This is pissing me off all over again. What an evil man you are, Matias. Evil. Evil. Do you know how many people hated the 5 young men when this went down? People hated them. People displayed hate towards them. They hated them. So Matias was only a teenager when his brutal crime spree began. In 1988, when he was just 17, he committed his first attempted rape, holding a 27-year-old woman at knife point as he threatened to assault her. The woman was able to talk Matias out of raping her, and she walked away unharmed. His future victims were not so lucky. In April 1989, just before the widely publicized Central Park jogging attack, Matias began beating and raping another 26-year-old woman in the northern part of Central Park. Mid-assault, he was spotted by a passerby and fled from the scene. The victim of this brutal assault later told police that her attacker had what appeared to be fresh stitches on his chin, and after putting out an inquiry to local hospitals and the sex crime investigator on the case got a name, Matias Reyes. Unfortunately, that investigator moved off the case shortly thereafter, and the victim moved away far from the city, never to be heard from by the New York Police Department again. Matias walked away without punishment. 2 days later, on April 19th, 1989, a 28-year-old white investment banker named Tricia Milley was out jogging in Central Park, as we said, and she was attacked in a similar fashion. Having been brutally raped and beaten, she suffered several skull fractures and a severe loss of blood. The Central Park jogger, as she would soon become known, we said it several times, she was left for dead in a park ravine. 4 hours later, she was found, and the search for her attacker or attackers began. As it's shown in the Netflix miniseries, 5 young black men, 4 young black and 1 Latino boys named Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salem, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise were ultimately accused of committing a violent crime against the Central Park jogger. The first 4 boys were sentenced to 5 to 10 years in a youth correctional facility, and the 5th boy, 16-year-old, was 5 to 15 years in an adult prison. DNA evidence found at the scene of their crime didn't match any of the 5 teens, but it made no difference. Like I said before, the general public had already decided them to be guilty. Meanwhile, the true perpetrator of the crime, Matthias, who was working as a deli clerk and living out of a van at the time, was free to keep committing his terrifying and violent crimes. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm looking at this guy's picture. Oh, wow. It's an incredible story. It's an incredible story. Matthias would continue on a spree of rapes and assaults, earning him the nickname East Side Slasher, until he was finally caught on August 5th in 1989. That afternoon, he broke into a 24-year-old woman's apartment before proceeding to rape her and ransack her home. Eventually, she was able to escape and run down to the lobby of her building, where she quickly explained to a porter and a fellow tenant what had just happened to her. When Matthias followed the woman down the stairs, the men held him down until police arrived. It didn't take long for police to connect Matthias to a series of other crimes in the area, and under interrogation, he confessed to 1 murder, 5 rapes, and 2 attempted rapes. He went to trial not long thereafter, where he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 33 years to life in prison. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Y'all gonna have to forgive me. I'm just touched by this whole story, and I guarantee you will be too. You will be too. Breaks my heart. Through all of his initial questioning, Matthias never once mentioned his connection to the Central Park jogger case. In fact, it wasn't until he met Corey Wise in prison that he even considered owning up to this particular crime. Matthias and Corey first crossed paths at an infamous Rikers Island jail, where they got into a scuffle over a TV. Then, more than a decade later, they found themselves in the same prison once again, this time the Auburn Correctional Facility. Oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. He said, for whatever reason, after this second chance meeting, Matthias felt moved to go to the police with the truth, and in 2002, He admitted to being the lone attacker in the Central Park jogger case. In a confession tape obtained by the New York Daily News, Matthias put it this way: "I know it's hard for people to understand, after 12 years, why a person will actually come forward to take responsibility for a crime. I've asked myself that question. At first I was afraid, but at the end of the day, I felt it was definitely the right thing to do." DNA evidence and Matthias' knowledge of details of the Central Park jogger rape ultimately confirmed his guilt, and the Manhattan District Attorney at the time, Robert Morgenthau, had Corey released from prison and the Central Park 5 vacated of all charges. It's ironic. Corey was innocent all of them were innocent, but Corey went downtown just to make sure that his friend Yusef, because he and Yusef were good friends, he felt like if he didn't go downtown with Yusef, that Yusef's mother would be mad at him. So he went downtown with Yusef, and he was the one that ended up being charged, and he was the one that ended up serving the most time. But ironically, he was the one that ended up getting them out. Ultimately, Matthias could not be convicted of the Central Park jogger rape because of the statute of limitations on the crime. He's still in prison today for his earliest murder, however, and although he will be eligible for parole in 2022, he's likely to stay incarcerated. To this day, the supervising prosecutor of the Central Park 5 case, Linda Faustine, as I mentioned, she maintains that the interrogation and trial methods used under her watch in the Central Park jogger case were fair and lawful. And despite all evidence pointing to the contrary, she stands by her conviction that Antoine, Kevin, Yusef, Raymond, and Corey participated in the 1989 attack. "I think Reyes ran with that pack of kids," she told the New Yorker in 2002. Oh, this is a lot. So I hope that you guys watch this series. Please watch it with your sons, watch it with your daughters, watch it with your neighbor, watch it with everybody you can. It's a very important series, and it just teaches us and shows us what to be aware of if we get arrested. There's a chance that you could be falsified into going to prison. There's a big chance, a huge chance, that you can be falsified for going to prison. I think all of Linda's Frankenstein cases should be reopened. And I think that the people that were on her prosecuting team back in 1989, they need to be held accountable for their actions. 5 men's lives were destroyed. They're still struggling. You took their childhood away. The youngest one was 14 years old. You took his childhood away. You took their childhood away. One of them said that they are still having issues and that they need help mentally. And it's because of you, Linda Frankenstein. I don't know what your name is, but you need to admit it, that you wrongfully accuse these men. You need to step down from whatever you're doing, and you need to go to prison and serve some time. I wonder how you would feel facing these men right now. How would you feel facing these men right now? You probably don't even care. You're a witch. You are a witch. You are a witch, and you like to go on witch hunts. That's what you do, Linda Feinstein. You, Donald Trump, Harvey Weinstein, all of y'all, devils. Devils. This is what we go through. We have been trying to tell people, citizens of this country, this for years. Thank God for social media. A lot of things are about to be revealed. You hear me? A lot of things about to be revealed. Don't be surprised when you hear so many things going down about this person or so many things going down about that person. Some things about to be revealed. And I hope that you guys are paying attention. I pray that you guys are paying attention. Anyway, this is BeeSparrow coming to you from the BuzzzTweet Radio. Before I go, I would like to thank all my listeners and all my subscribers for tuning in and kicking it with me. Thank you for all the donations that were given to me. They will be used wisely. Trust me. It will be used. The monies that you give me will be used wisely. And I just really appreciate it. I appreciate it. I really do. It brings joy to my heart to know that I am able to touch somebody through the sound of my voice or through the music that I play on this show. I have people tell me all the time I've made their day or I help them make it through the day. See, at 5:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Time, I'm on the MCDE network playing music. And a lot of people listen to me at their desk or on their way to work. And they very appreciative of what I bring to them to help them make it through the day. And that makes me feel real good. So I am BeeSparrow across the board. I think on Twitter I am It's BeeSparrow. You can hit me there. I'm not BeeSparrow all across the board. I'm BeeSparrow on Spreaker. On YouTube, you can hit me up at youtube.com/c/BevLaws. That's B like Bobby, E V like Victor, L like Larry, AWS like Samantha. Bev Laws. Black girl named Bev on Twitter. What you call that other one? Instagram. And Bees Pod Hots on Facebook. I thank you guys for listening. Please do go and watch the Netflix series. Once you watch that Netflix series, hit me up on Bees Pod Hots. That's my email. No, beespod@gmail.com. Hit me up at beespod@gmail.com and let me know if you want to do a round table where we can talk about this episode. beespod.com. Okay? It's your girl BeeSparrow, BuzzzTweet Radio. I'll talk to you guys later. Run.